Good morning. I'm Matt Widener. I'm here in my office early on a Monday morning, preparing for yet another week of battle in these foreclosure wars. I took some time off last week and had an opportunity to step back from these day-to-day battles occurring here in my office and took an opportunity to look at the much larger picture of what's happening in the economy in the United States of America and frankly the world. It's important to understand that what's happening in this foreclosure war is frankly a symptom of the much larger war that's occurring across this country and frankly across the world. I've come away with the perspective that what's occurring in foreclosure courtrooms and what's occurring in our foreclosure files is but a symptom of a much larger and far more problematic war that we are engaged in. It's important that we all understand what's occurring here, and that is we are in dire financial troubles. Some might point to the stock market and other indicators as some proof that there's some stability or frankly some hopefulness in our economy, but frankly I see very little that we can be encouraged by in this economy. Of course, the fundamental problem is jobs. People are not working. The numbers that are published by the government and that are regularly quoted by the media are just absurd. We are not dealing with 10% unemployment. That is a vastly smaller figure than what we're really dealing with. We need to be taking into consideration not just those people that are applying for unemployment benefits, but all of our citizens who are unemployed or underemployed and who are making less than they should be making or were making just a few years ago. When you factor in all of those numbers, and in fact those are the really important numbers, you will come to understand that unemployment, underemployment in this country has got to be somewhere above 25 or 30%. And that's a terribly troubling figure. But even that figure masks the much larger trouble, and that is the fundamental instability of this entire economy. We are an economy that is based on spending money, not on creating things or not on saving things and not on being anything really productive. If you look at the national economy and compare it to your individual financial situation, our economy has gone from an economy where we produced things, where we all went out and really worked and engaged in meaningful effort, building something, creating something, digging, planting, creating, to an economy that's based largely on a credit card. And so rather than America getting up and going to work in the morning and creating something, America gets up every morning, whips out a big credit card, and goes out and charges all of our activities on a credit card. It is a fundamentally unstable economic situation that we are in. And the foreclosure crisis is just a symptom of this much larger problem. For the last couple of weeks, we've all been sort of distracted by national and local elections. All the hoopla over who's going to Congress and who's going to our state houses of leadership is really the equivalent of the Roman circuses and bread, where it's a distraction from what is the real problem, and that is the fundamental rot that is at the core of our economy. We are deeply in debt to nations all across the world, primarily China, but all over the world. But we're not alone. Recent articles in the Wall Street Journal, particularly Saturday, have pointed to the fact that all of the major economies are needing to come up with major capital in order to fund their current operations going forward. This is all fundamentally destabilizing in the long run. I want you to think about how you live your life and compare that to how governments are running operations. And again, not just the United States, but the world economies, where we're borrowing or needing to borrow 30%, 25 to 30% of current expenditures in order just to fund the operations. And the debt service that occurs on that borrowing is unstabilizing, it's destabilizing, and it cannot continue. Well, we need to channel the energy that was raised during this ridiculous election cycle into a fundamental awakening of the American people to demand change in this economy. Now, we can all talk about change and we can all talk about us doing our part, but the fact of the matter is that we are going to need to do some very real belt tightening, some very real trimming and cutting of our expenditures. I think one of the things that's most disturbing about the course of the American economy that's been charted is that it is radically opposed to what is occurring in Europe, in the rest of the world, frankly. While the United States has determined to take a course of action called QE2, or quantitative easing, that simply means that the federal government has decided to print money. They've turned on the printing presses to the tune of $600 billion, and they're just going to flood the American economy with this printed money. That is a position that is a direct opposition to what is occurring in European countries, and most notably Great Britain, where they announced some significant austerity measures. Wall Street Journal and other publications are pointing out the dramatic differences that are occurring. The other world economies, again particularly Europe, have looked at their economies and they've said, look, we can't continue to spend what we're spending here. We all need to cut back, reduce programs, reduce services that are being offered, and get our budgets more in line with the income that's coming in. I think that's a far more responsible response to the world economy. I'm looking at what is occurring in our national policy making and our national economic policy making. And frankly, I have a very limited and simplistic view of economics. I don't understand the stock market. I think the stock market is a con. It's a scam. I just don't get it. And maybe that makes me a simpleton. But, you know, I view work and economy as very simple. You come in, you make something, you get paid for it, you put that money away. That is fundamentally in opposition to what occurs in Wall Street and in these big financial centers of power, where the money is made based on phantom trades and phantom operations that frankly, I don't believe most of those people really understand. I think that's one of the key takeaways that I get from review of the subprime boom and in my particular area of focus here, and that is what's happening in the financial markets. If you read that very long rant that I posted under the title, First Thing We Do, Let's Kill All the Foreclosure Defense Lawyers, I recognize that it's very long. I didn't intend it to be, but as I started unraveling all that I had been reading and studying, it did continue to play out. But what I found from that research, and as I started to put it all on paper, it was quite shocking. You know, we expect, I lived under the delusion that our leadership, both nationally and locally and at the state level, and our leadership both in business and in government, we're operating rationally, and that we're supervising each other and doing what was in the best interests of the larger economy, both on the private side, where private businesses were operating rationally and in a way that would preserve and protect and move the markets and our financial system forward. And then on the government side, I was operating under the naive impression that government regulators, whether they be at the Securities and Exchange Commission or frankly Congress or the White House or any of the other agencies or authorities that we would expect, had been adequately supervising our national economy. I think what you find from a detailed and exhaustive examination of what caused the economic collapse in 2008 was that nobody was minding the store. You know, prior to 2002, 2003-ish or so, the mortgage market was a relatively small fraction of the national economy. But beginning in 2002-ish and frankly a little bit before, but really heating up through 2004, 2005, what you found was that a few businesses, primarily mortgage brokerage and lending organizations out of Southern California, discovered that they could go out and make loans on Americans' homes and pocket some pretty hefty fees and profits from that. And so this very small business model, which was frankly quite unique, started going all across the country. So one subprime lending company after another started to develop out of Southern California, out of just a few. And as these subprime lenders would make millions of dollars and then billions of dollars on formulating these loans or going out and closing these loans, that money then was aggregated. Millions of dollars became billions of dollars, which was then transferred up to New York City primarily. And in New York and in Wall Street, these millions of dollars in loans were packaged into billions of dollars in loans. And then the wizards in Wall Street would take those billion-dollar packages of loans and they would sell those loans or sell interests in those loans to investment houses all across the country and all across the world. And so what you would find is, thousands of loans on homes of normal Americans from all across the country were packaged into these pools of mortgage trusts. And then these mortgage trusts were offered for sale to investment houses across the world, primarily Germany, but frankly all around the world. And it was a very compelling sales job. You'd have a teachers union in Germany, for instance, or a police union in Germany that would have collected hundreds of millions of Deutschmarks. And those teachers union investment houses were looking for somewhere to invest those Deutschmarks, which would provide stable return to their retired teachers, their retired police officers. And what more stable investment could those investment managers look to but secure investment in American real estate, secure investment made on the backs of American homeowners? Because after all, particularly at that point in time, the American economy was viewed as the pinnacle of achievement and stability. Americans were known as hard workers, and we fulfilled our obligations. We had a system of government that was open and supervised these things. So when Bear Stearns and Merrill Lynch and all these other companies would bring these pools of loans to our allies in their investment houses, they would convince them that these loans were very stable investments, and the teachers' unions from around the world could invest 100 million Deutschmarks, for instance, into this pool of loans, and they would receive an 8% return on that money. And because of the perceived stability of that investment, that 8% return was viewed as a very, very stable, very good investment. And so across the board, these investments were made in these pools of loans. And one of the most disturbing elements of this whole widespread process was the fact that no one really did due diligence to confirm the quality of the loans that were in these pools of loans. You see, each of the loan packages or pools or mortgage loan trust carried with it a stamp of approval. Standard & Poor's, Moody's, Fitch. They would all grade the loan trust that was being offered to that teachers union. And so the teachers union would get a prospectus, and it would say, all these loans in here are AA or AAA or whatever. And so that was the primary independent source of verification that the investors that were buying these loans would use to confirm that the loans in this pool were of high quality. And that was the primary source of independent confirmation that the investment they were making in these pools was stable and was good. Well, part of the dirty secrets that's come out since the collapse in 2008, well, the fact that the rating agencies that were putting their stamp of approval on these loan trusts were not, in fact, reviewing the loans. Early in the subprime boom, the rating agencies would review a statistically relevant subset of the loan pools, and they, based on those reviews and audits, would stamp the approval on there. But in the fury to close more of these loans, it got to the point where the rating agencies were not actually reviewing the loans. They were simply telling those that would package the loans at Bear Stearns and Merrill Lynch and elsewhere, hey, if your borrowers meet the credit score of an average of 740 and their debt to income is 30% or whatever, and their income is 50% or whatever, then that'll get this AAA stamp. But what you saw was a fundamental breakdown in the independent rating agencies. These folks that were putting their stamps of approval on these